if the poets would be so kind to come up here, and we'll give you each a microphone. Rather, I'll keep one microphone for the audience. So, any questions? Any remarks?
Hi. I'm just curious, when you're writing, do you ever censor yourself thinking about who may be reading your poetry, or do you have to give that up when you're writing, to be totally honest? This is for both of you.
My writing usually starts off very early in the morning when I'm not clouded with thoughts of the day or who I'm going to see or what I have to do. And so I sort of hear myself a little bit more thoroughly. Sometimes I think of things I may want to say to people, but censoring doesn't usually enter into it.
Oh, I wish that. You know, it's hard, of course. I think the aim is not to censor, to be able to arrive at a place within yourself that you never knew you could get to surprise yourself that way. It's a gift also in that way, that you come out with words, but whole lines that just pop out. I used to call it being the goose that had the golden egg or something. Suddenly, if a line was there and thrilled me, I would think, oh, it came up and out of my mouth, you know, and I felt it this way. But now a lot comes from what I read. It triggers. We use the word trigger. Things that happen to you in your reading or in just your engagement with life. Trigger. Feelings that you have, and if you're smart, you write them down right then because they disappear. Like dreams, they disappear.
I'm left with the magazine, the paper, Freiheit.
Oh, the flight.
Yeah, and I have such a strong sense that the sweep of your poetry has to do with Freiheit. And I'll stop with my analysis there.
Well, but that could, in one second, it could bring tears because that's the house I grew up in. The house of the family I felt understood me, supported me. My parents were wonderful, but my mother would say, talk to Myra, you talk to the wall. And I felt bad about that. But this other family let me be just the way I was. And it was a Marxist family. And it was a family that believed in community, and sitting around the table, one tea bag for everybody. You know, Freiheit was the newspaper of that day. It no longer is the Forfeits, we call the other one.
Oh, please.
Yes, that's it. Yeah. Thank you. Yes.
I have a question for both of you. I'm just wondering how you choose which poems you're going to read. How do you go about making those choices? What is it that brings you to the poems that you read?
Well, I think it starts with how much time one is allotted. I mean, you gave me 2 hours, I read the book from beginning to end. No. I think some poems can be delivered. Some poems need a little bit more internal dwelling with them. One wants to make some kind of linkage. One wants to provide some variety and sort of to give a sense, at least in this reading, I wanted to give a sense of the whole of the book. Obviously, you can't summarize it, but and then some by request. That's some requests also. So that makes it easy.
Linkage, I mean,
Linkage.
that's right. You shape it, I think, and when you put a manuscript, put a manuscript together to make a book, it's not just a matter of putting together every poem you've written since the last book, if you have an earlier book. You shape it. And a reading, I feel, is the same thing. And when I started to shape this one, yes, the time allotted, in my mind was the fact that we were going to be reading at the NYU Bookstore. NYU was the place I came after my first sublet. I mean, I started in a workshop at the Y with Patty and someone to see in Lois. And then met Galway Cannell, and he had just started the writing program at NYU. So here I am, back where I started, and my grandson goes to NYU, so I wanted it to be a New York City-centric reading. But then, I don't know, I thought that after a while it got too heavy on that. You're right, you want variety. So then I got all taken up with the whole thing about words. You never know. So that's it. You surprise yourself.
I wrote one poem in my life. It was after my father died. It came out of a dream and just sort of popped out. And I wrote it down, and that was the end of my career as a poet. I was wondering, as a professional poet or semi-professional poet, how do you, what's the discipline that you use to write poetry? You're not waiting for things to pop out, I assume.
Well, I have an appointment at my desk every morning, 5:30, early. Get a couple of hours. As I said, it's clear-headed time, and I say whether I have something to write or not, but I usually have something to write or at least something to work on. I mean, one of the things about crafting poems is working on them. I mean, some lines, we do get some golden eggs coming out of our mouths, right? But a lot is worked on very meticulously and then balanced and rebalanced. So some of these poems I might have 20 versions of, and so there's a discipline, there's a craft, there's listening to the music, and then sometimes throwing something out and beginning again. But I think the regularity.
Yeah, it's a devotion. To say just a little anecdote about that. I have a friend who has a marvelous way with words. She's witty. She does write poetry sometimes, but she refuses to be disciplined. She said, "No, I don't want to be tied to. When I want to write a poem, I write a poem, and I don't want to." Well, I can't even imagine being a poet without a community of poets, for instance. So I think that's part of it too. What Owen said, the discipline, yes. For me, also reading. I read poetry every day. In fact, I start my day that way, by reading. But I do think that you need to work in community.
You read to each other?
Community. You have a raw poem, you've written a poem, a rough draft, you think it's wonderful, oh, look, this poem, and you take it to a group, and they hear what may be strong, but also you can feel their eyes glazing over or something. What it may need, a community. It's a wonderful, and Wendy here, there are many people here, part of that writing community that I have. But Wendy goes back how many years? Many. Childhood. Yeah, I believe in community. That connects to writing.
I guess I have a question that follows on that about the craft, because having just finished a social science book manuscript that went through 9 iterations and is now being read by somebody unknown to critique it and get it back to us to rewrite it again. Who do you give the poems to, the work you do, and at what point to get feedback that is very different than social science? It's you're writing something.
But you've written prose and something. I mean, how is it that you could connect to prose is what you've written in your field?
Well, the prose writing is completely different. The academic prose writing is completely different. Comes from a different place. Craft. I mean, who do we show it to? There's some teachers.
Talking about community.
Community.
I'm wondering how that community works to help you.
That's how we met.
Well, we met.
Standing.
Right.
That's why
We work, and several others of us are in a group together. My friend Jim Tolan, whose book Mass of the Forgotten just came out.
Larson, Marianne Downing,
Rosalind.
So do you see
Jim.
those things in as they're emerging and they change you?
Right? But we draw on each other. Jim read this manuscript more than once. So we look to one another also.
yeah, well, no, it's just that we meet, and there's a regularity. This particular group, Owen mentioned, meets once a month. We're not Jack lit as a robber caught with the goods. That's the poem when I was about to close my eyes. And I didn't have that. Didn't know that word, Jack lit. That's a hunting word, I think, isn't it? So I don't know, Wendy knew it, and Wendy said, well, you were surprised. It was kind of as if someone had come at you with a flashlight, Jack lit. Well, I thought that was wonderful. Jack lit as a robber, caught with the goods. Every time I read that, Wendy is there. And I just have that.
And every time she gives me credit.
I wanted to say something to you, Owen. And what impressed me is, given your profession, how much of you remains alive on so many different levels. So early in the morning.
You don't want to see me late at night.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Yes.
I just wonder, when you speak a poem as opposed to reading it, whether you feel it comes, the new meaning come out of it. Does the way that you pronounce a word or even speak it, that influences the way that people understand it? So I don't know if there's poems you think are better read but not spoken, or vice versa.
I think in the end, for me, all poems are oral poems. I mean, I've written a few where the arrangement is, but that's more kind of a gimmick. I mean, sometimes it works. But on first hearing, some are more immediate than others. But and how they are read, how they are spoken. For me, in reading and presenting a poem, it's really about being in contact with the emotion that that brought it to being in the first place. That's partly the discipline of a reading, and once I am there, it may come out differently. I may emphasize a different word from one reading to the next. It's not a static thing, but because I think the feeling, if you're in the zone, the feeling of a poem, it's going to be a dynamic thing that may have different emphasis, but hopefully the poem becomes a hook that not only takes one as a reader there, but as a writer, but also readers to that place.
So you don't like rehearse a poem over and over until you have it just right for an audience like this?
I do think about pacing. But that comes out. I'm using that to get back into the poem. It's a different kind of rehearsal. It's not. Well, Dominic, maybe you want to say something about it as an actor, but.
My question was similar to that. The thing with acting, you have to know the whole arc before you start interpreting each one. Because if you change the ending, you're going to change the beginning, you change everything. So that's important. My question, if you don't mind, Raj, can I go to my question?
Yeah.
We're friends. My question is, if you see something, observation, like a baby smiles, baby has curly hair, do you ever write a poem just seeing one little observation and then see where it's going to take you, or do you have a memory of it? What's the ratio of poetry?
I can think of an example in an earlier book. I used to have a half of grapefruit with breakfast every morning, and I was cutting it, and the other half I put against a plate to keep it for the next day. And just that day I thought, oh, my mother used to do this. Oh. And so I ended up writing a poem I thought was not a didn't think it was anything, and it's one of the most popular poems in the first book that I have.
So you start with an observation,
I
one
did
line,
that one.
then
that
it keeps
one.
going because
and
you're
then
like,
it just, that's it. If you start with it and it goes nowhere, you have to. But if you start with it, then it can surprise you.
Yeah, it often is an observation, but just the way something grabs one. But back to Myra's words, it could also be a phrase that you just hear that kind of lodges in your ear, and then that can take you someplace. It might be a sound observation.
I like what Frost says, that a poem should be like a piece of ice on the back of the stove. It should ride out on its own melting.
Ride out on its own melting. That's right. As I can see. But it's a very hard thing to do. It's a hard thing to do because we're always, paying attention to it. If you start being too controlling, that's the struggle. That's the struggle. And that's why also with the oral, saying it aloud, you were talking about that, a person that we work with, Fran Quinn, is a huge fanatic believer in hearing poetry, in the oral presentation. He has us listening to the way I just broke a line. He has us listening to the way, and then the line we speak, so that everybody speaks in lines, because we pause before the period. If we were speaking in sentences, we would. And so he has us listening to things like that.
that's what you do in acting too. You say, I'm shading, I go over the lines 40 times and memorize them. But what comes out later on is something else. But you do have to listen to, you're saying them out loud in your mind anyway.
Yes. And I surprised myself by having them inside, and you must also too.
Sometimes.
It's like music, isn't it? Isn't reading poetry like hearing music?
Yeah.
Instead of just looking at notes.
Hearing the phrases, hearing.
I'm sorry, but we're going to have to end. I feel like we're starting a community here of writers and poetry lovers. Owen Lewis, Myra Shapiro, thank you for sharing your poems, your words, your thoughts, observations, amazing sensitivity.